Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here. My name is Mark Denzler. I'm the President and CEO of the Illinois Manufacturers Association. I assumed the role of CEO in January of this year. Very proud to represent the creators, the innovators, and the dreamers who make our lives better every single day. I want to give a little background about who the manufacturing sector is in Illinois. My member companies make life-saving products. They help feed the world. They build our nation's infrastructure, transport people and products around the world. They allow for communication, they power our homes and businesses, and they help provide for our nation's defense. Illinois manufacturers are in food manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, aeronautical, engineering and manufacturing, you name it, just about anything you can imagine is built in the state of Illinois. Illinois' manufacturing sector employs 580,000 workers directly and contributes the single largest share of the gross state product. The men and women working in Illinois factories today earn on average nearly $84,000 a year in wages and benefits. These are good middle-class jobs. I'd also note that manufacturing has the single highest job multiplier of any sector. Every manufacturing job leads to an additional 3 jobs. And every dollar invested in manufacturing generates an additional $1.89 in economic output. Again, the highest multiplier effect of any sector of our economy. So quite simply, manufacturing is critical to the Illinois economy. Manufacturing creates wealth, opportunity, and prosperity for 12 million people across the country and more than 1/2 million men and women in the state of Illinois. Illinois manufacturers have faced tremendous challenges over the past decade, and we've seen the results. Our neighboring states have added 3 times the number of manufacturing jobs on average since the end of the recession. Illinois has all the natural attributes to be the economic engine of the Midwest and the nation if we can get our policy correct. We're centrally located with an excellent workforce. Chicago is a world-class city, and we have global airports. We have access to water, affordable energy. Our infrastructure is diverse with road, rail, air, and waterways. Today, the IMA is going to be offering some policy recommendations for this spring to help move our state forward. There is no doubt that we are playing defense on a large number of fronts, but we're also offering some solutions today to central issues such as workforce development. I want to focus on education and workforce development first. Illinois manufacturers, large and small, public and private, all sectors are facing a workforce challenge, and we need to help fill that pipeline with qualified workers. I mentioned that Illinois manufacturers employ about 580,000 workers today. Half of those workers, or 300,000 men and women, are set to retire in the next decade, meaning we need to find 20,000 plus production workers and more than 3,000 engineers every single year just to remain level. The IMA has 2 workforce proposals that we're offering this year. The first is Grow Your Own STEM Teacher Act, and the second has to do with apprenticeships. As you know, we've lost a lot of vocational education programs in our high schools and colleges. We've surveyed these schools and asked them the question, could you double output? Community colleges, could you double your capacity? And they say yes. The problem is they don't have the instructors for high school or community colleges. So we're proposing that we should waive tuition for students in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, who will then commit to teaching in Illinois public high schools and public universities for a period of time. The IMA and our partners at the German-American Chamber of Commerce and other organizations are leading the ICAT apprenticeship program. Many employers are using apprenticeships to essentially grow their own employees in-house. This small incentive will help offset the cost of instructional materials for apprentices who will work 2 to 3 years while in school and then move directly into the workplace. Last year, I'd just like to point out and remind folks, the IMA passed legislation lowering the age to 16 for students who can participate in dual credit programs so that more students can get involved in manufacturing and industrial education. With regard to the tax code, the IMA has a couple different provisions impacting manufacturing. The first, we need a permanent and modern research and development tax credit. Illinois lawmakers over the last 20 years have turned the R&D credit on and off 5 times. Provides no stability and no predictability. Research and development is the lifeblood of manufacturing. You all are sitting there today with an iPhone or an Android. We're in the 11th year of the iPhone. You think of how many iterations have come out about that. So while the R&D credit doesn't expire this year, it expires in 2 years, we're asking the General Assembly to make it both permanent and to modernize it. This is important for a variety of sectors across the state: the biosciences, the pharmaceutical, the advanced manufacturing, heavy equipment. All of these companies are wanting to invest in research and development to create the next wave of products that they can sell. We have seen over the last number of years a number of R&D facilities in Illinois close down and move to the West Coast or the East Coast, largely because of Illinois' instability when it comes to research and development. The average research and development job pays about $125,000 a year, and we're losing them to other states. We're also asking legislators to extend the manufacturer's purchase credit that expired during the budget stalemate and offer small businesses some regulatory tax relief with regard to unemployment insurance. Most businesses have to pay their entire unemployment insurance payment during the first quarter of a year. We're asking the state to amend the UI statute to allow these small businesses to pay it quarterly to allow for better cash flow and flexibility. Finally, the IMA and organized labor are partnering together on a critical infrastructure bill that may be called later today in a House committee. This will increase penalties for individuals who trespass and intentionally damage critical infrastructure in our state. These are things like power plants, water plants, communication towers, manufacturing facilities, pipelines, and more. More and more, we are seeing violent protesters around the country that are causing damage to these facilities and these properties and shutting down operations. We're not talking about spray painting a fence. We're talking about critically damaging key infrastructure that's important to the state. When this occurs, it threatens the health and safety of the protesters, of the employees, and the communities in which they're located. And I would point out this legislation continues to allow for peaceful protests, First Amendment rights. It allows for unions to continue to picket if they want to do so, but we want to impose more stringent penalties on those who, again, criminally trespass and intentionally damage our nation's critical infrastructure. I'll just end it by saying that manufacturing is a vital component to Illinois' economy. It's time that policymakers focus on how we can help revitalize and grow this sector. I wish they would spend half as much time on $84,000 a year manufacturing jobs as they did on $15 an hour minimum wage jobs. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
You said your industry's on the defensive right now. Why?
So we're facing a whole host of things. Certainly, we've seen the minimum wage pass that's going to increase costs. The graduated income tax, I've heard from a number of our member companies, is going to substantially increase cost. We are looking at some energy legislation, and when you talk about a manufacturing, what are their three largest costs? Personnel, energy, and oftentimes taxes. So, and that's not in addition, Greg, to a number of mandates that we're seeing, whether they're healthcare mandates, they're labor law mandates. We're not seeing any proactive legislation to make Illinois better for manufacturing, which is why we're stepping forward with some ideas that I think are bipartisan in nature, and particularly addressing the workforce issue that's critical to all the manufacturing sector.
Workers' comp, I don't see anything in this list of bills that addresses workers' comp.
We're certainly concerned about the cost of workers' for years. There are interest groups that have no interest in working on this, and I just don't think we're going to have any action in the House or Senate, so we're trying to focus on things where we can have movement this year.
The Grow Your Own Teacher Act, the traditional one, it's been kind of the butt of many jokes over the last several years. And this program that doesn't exactly work. Why risk calling it the same thing?
So we had this last year and it passed the Senate. We're coming back this year. We struggle, as I indicated at the beginning, as we've lost vocational education programs in high schools and in colleges, the teaching colleges are not teaching students to become instructors in this. So this is a systemic problem. So we're not going to fix this unless we can get teachers and instructors in the classroom.
Mark, what happens if you just can't fill these jobs? Do the jobs go to other states?
They do, and this is a challenge not in Illinois but nationally. And so, Tony, it's a great question. So when you look at it, Department of Labor just released statistics yesterday. For the 12th month in a row, there are more job openings in this country than there are people seeking those jobs. Today, there are 452,000 open manufacturing jobs in the United States and tens of thousands in Illinois. And again, these are jobs that pay on average $84,000 a year in wages and benefits. So, Tony, what we've seen, for example, in Wisconsin, Wisconsin is intentionally, they've done an $8 million media campaign trying to get Illinois workers to come to Wisconsin in manufacturing. So we have to do something. We have to create the jobs here so that employees want to stay here, but we also have to develop these workers. And again, if we don't have it, they're going to go to other places.
What else is the manufacturing sector and employers doing to, if you can elaborate on training people internally, working with community colleges, working with universities, working with high schools? Talk a bit about how that plays out.
Sure, and every manufacturer is doing. They're all concerned about this, whether they're a Fortune 50 company or they're one of our average size companies with 100 employees. Some are working with community colleges, and it's a little bit different. What you need in Lake County, for example, maybe in the pharmaceutical, is different than what you need in Peoria. So employers are working with their K through 12 school districts. They're working with community colleges, technical schools. Manufacturing today, you no longer walk out of a high school, walk to your factory, work 40 years and retire. You have to have some additional training. So a lot of them are dealing with apprenticeships, and they're saying we're going to go on our own. There's some novel approaches where they're partnering with churches to try to get some parishioners in. We have programs with the Girl Scouts and the Junior League. We're doing things with military, trying to get returning veterans into the program. So every manufacturer is a little bit different, but one of the important things, especially on apprenticeships, you have to teach to a certain level. And having an apprenticeship program that doesn't teach to industry standards doesn't help. And so we need to make sure that when you do these apprenticeships or you're teaching these programs, they are held to a certain standard. You wouldn't expect your nurses to learn different standards or your doctors. You also need to make sure that manufacturing workers coming out of schools are held to high standards.
These two tax credits, or purchase credit, in the case of the second one. For example, when the purchase credit expired, how long had it been going prior to that?
I believe the purchase credit, it was first created during the Edgar administration. And what happened with it in the research and development, if you remember under Blagojevich, very briefly they sunset these credits and they brought them back 6 months later. And then the General Assembly ruled that they fall under the 5-year sunset. They had been permanent for a period of time. So again, during the budget stalemate, it was in the Senate bill, part of the grand bargain that passed over, and it was taken out in the House. And so again, we need to grow the manufacturing sector. You know, there's a lot of focus on coal mining jobs or these jobs, but manufacturing is the base of our economy. Everything is farmed, mined, or manufactured. I mean, those are the core sectors of Illinois' economy, and we need to devote more time to growing the manufacturing sector.
Mark, the words penalty enhancement are kind of danger words under the State House. I'm wondering if you can give us a little context about where the penalty is right now. I mean, I'm looking at right now that under this bill, a Class 1 felony is punished by $100,000 of imprisonment. What makes you think that can get any traction in the state?
We're working with members of the General Assembly on this, and certainly there's been a lot of decriminalization efforts. But as I indicated, we're not talking about spray painting a fence or slashing the tires on a car. What we've seen violent protesters go out, for example, on a pipeline and literally open the pipeline up. We've seen some cases where there's been fires or in some cases some small explosions. We're talking about really critically damaging infrastructure. And you think about if they go into a nuclear facility, they go into a water system, and they do something that could cause substantial or significant harm. So we're talking about those really violent protesters that are significantly causing damage, and we think we can make that policy argument to lawmakers.
Is this something you've seen in Illinois, or is this more of a proactive approach as we've seen across the country?
It's a little bit of a proactive approach. We've seen a couple issues in Illinois, but we've really seen this nationally, a lot of different things. And again, we're not talking about your average protester that comes on. They have to they have to trespass and then intentionally inflict significant damage on our nation's critical infrastructure.
Is there an example that you can think of that's happened in Illinois?
We can get you some of those. Yeah.
But there's also an increase in a penalty for people who are convicted of conspiracy to commit. So people would be sentenced to a fine of not less than 10 times the minimum fine authorized for the offense. And I don't know what the current fine is, but not less than 10 times what it is.
So right now it's a slap on the wrist, and so there's really no significant pushback for someone to do this. And when we're talking about organizations, we're not saying you belong to a local environmental club, you know, but we're talking if you have an organization that pays, and I say, I'm going to go give you $1,000 and a bus ticket. I want you to go and I want you to crack open this pipeline or mess with this water dam. That's what we're talking about there.
If you had, you know, a blank chalkboard, more in new revenue with the progressive income tax. What would your message be to them? What do you think the manufacturers would want to tell them?
Well, and I would point back to history, first of all. You have to explain the significant impact of the manufacturing sector. And you look back since 2009, the end of the recession, again, we've added about 20,000 jobs in this state. Our neighboring states, on average, have added 68,000. So think about if we had an additional 48,000 people working in the state, paying taxes, buying things, at an average wage of $84,000. And so they face the same global challenges, the same federal challenges. What's different? Illinois policy. And so, again, if we can get the policy right, we're so well situated to be a manufacturing juggernaut, an economic powerhouse. We just have to get the policy right. And increase minimum wage, you're adding cost. Potentially increase cost through an energy bill, increase costs through a tax, increase costs through regulations. You have to do something to stimulate the manufacturing sector, or we're going to continue to see it deteriorate in the state of Illinois.
Other manufacturers in the group come here and talk about how it's more expensive to do business in Illinois for those small businesses by such an increase.
Well, certainly it'll be an impact. And one of the things that we don't think the press focuses on enough, and I want to keep in mind, so the corporate rate of 7.95, you have to add 2.5% corporate personal property replacement tax. That never gets picked up in the media. So the top corporate rate is going to be 10.45%. The individual rate, if you are a pass-through entity and you're a subchapter S, LLC, or partnership, you pay an additional 1.5% corporate personal property replacement tax. So the top rate is not 7.95 for small business, it's 9.45%. So that's an important designation to keep in mind when you're looking at these tax calculators that are out there. They don't properly reflect that for the business community, nor do they reflect the property tax. Property taxes are a significant impediment for businesses in Cook County. They've seen the largest reduction in manufacturing jobs, 40% since the year 2000, and part of that can be attributable to the property tax system. So, again, all of these things add up, and the more costs you impose on manufacturers, the less likely they are to expand or do business in Illinois.
But schools schools and the infrastructure we've been talking about rely on those taxes, on the corporate personal property replacement tax. Slashing them could certainly hurt those two things, right?
Well, I didn't mention slashing them. What I said is when you calculate what the cost is for business, the top rate's not 7.95. It's either 9.45% or 10.45%. It's just something that gets glossed over in a lot of coverage. They say, oh, your top rate's 7.95. It's not. It's 10.45.
Have you spoken with Governor Pritzker or members of his administration? Is there any sort of promise about bringing additional manufacturing jobs or employers in Illinois?
We've spoken to the Department of Commerce. I was actually with the governor on Friday at M-Hub in Chicago, celebrating their second anniversary. The manufacturing hub, if you're not familiar, is kind of an incubator on Goose Island. And the governor spoke there about the importance of manufacturing and the importance of research and development and advanced manufacturing. So I think he wants to move in that direction. We're certainly willing to have those conversations and work with him on a bipartisan approach on some of these things that we think are bipartisan and can get done this session. But, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Our officers,
Jeff Berkowitz, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. We're going to take a bit of an in-depth look at the run for the mayor of Chicago. I think what they care about are the issues we're talking about. What are you going to do about the schools? What are you going to do about fixing the financial situation of the city? And what are you going to do about the level of crime and ensuring that we have safe neighborhoods? Would I be right on that?
yes.
The Illinois Channel, keeping you connected to your state, your issues, your home.